Why is it so hard to use my coffee cup at the convenience store? These are things other countries seem to have really developed quickly. And why Japan isn't moving forward. Huge issue right now in Japan is labor. You have to take away the bad choice. We talk about over-tourism stuff. Hawaii has been dealing with these same problems that we're seeing in Japan for many, many years.
Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today I'm sitting here with Joy, also known as JJ. You are the founder of Seek Sustainable Japan, a company based in Hiroshima that provides consulting services to other companies and promote sustainability, especially in the travel and tourism sector.
Actually, my company name is Inbound Ambassador.
Okay, so Seek Sustainable Japan is a branch of that company.
It's my podcast talk show name.
Okay.
Yeah, but they work together.
They work together, one in one. And you came today all the way from Hiroshima on a very rainy day, so thank you very much for coming.
Of course. Thanks for asking me. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. And we want to talk a lot about sustainability in Japan. But before we get into that, maybe could you introduce yourself a little bit? Where are you from and what brought you to Japan?
Of course. My journey started, I think, growing up in Hawaii. I had a lot of Japanese American friends, Japanese food, Japanese culture. At my elementary school, we learned bon dancing, you know, as we are really embedded with Japanese culture in Hawaii. And my dad remarried a Japanese woman, moved to Japan. So when I graduated university,
you have a
I
connection
asked
already.
to come over to where they were, which was a very small place in Kyushu. And when I did the JET interview, I know you've talked about JET before on the show, right?
A little bit, yeah.
And when I did the JET interview, I said, "Can I go to Oita?" And they're like, "You want to go to Oita? Okay." You could see them writing down quite enthusiastically, "Yeah, we want her." Most people would ask for Osaka or
Tokyo.
Kyoto or Tokyo, right? And then once I came, I thought just a year. I was already entered in graduate school, already had a plan to go back.
Seems like that's what a lot of people say. I'm just coming for a year, just taking a quick break, just experiencing Japan.
Yes. And then it turned into 3 years on the JET program. I met so many amazing people. I traveled all around Japan during that time. And then we had a bunch of money saved up. I had met my now husband, who's from England while we were there. We ended up traveling around Asia, a bit of Europe together for 2 years, backpacking, and that was a wonderful experience as well. And then we ran out of money, and we were thinking, we'll just go back to Japan for a short time again, get some more money, and then go traveling again. And so we saw there was a job in Hiroshima.
Oh, nice.
And we
Good
had
place.
traveled through Hiroshima a few times. And my husband, he loves trail running. He's a mountain guy, just loves mountains. And I grew up in Hawaii. I love islands. I love water and being next to the ocean. And Hiroshima just seemed perfect for us. It had both.
Yeah, a little bit of both.
And we had a great feeling about the vibe of the city and the local people. So when a job opened up, it was actually asking for a British national. And so I applied for my boyfriend. And he ended up getting the job.
So he didn't know about it. You just applied for it.
No. Luckily, he went along with it. And then when he got a job, then I got a job at a junior college. And then both of us ended up getting jobs in university. We raised 2 kids in Japan, which is a fantastic place to raise kids.
Yeah, it's safe, a lot of public services available.
Yeah. And then we started a website in 1999 called Get Hiroshima. And a friend of ours in Kuala Lumpur was making websites. This was in 99. And he said, "Would you like to introduce some things about Hiroshima? And we'll just try this website thing." It was really new at that time. And we're like, yeah, that'd be great, because we have so many friends who are always going to the same places. And so that was a chance for us to really connect with local people, local businesses.
And highlight them a little bit.
And I think that's probably the reason we're still here, to be honest, because we felt more embedded in life and business and culture in Hiroshima.
You found a community.
Yeah. And we could introduce a little bit deeper experiences for residents and visitors. And then that led to making tourist maps and working in the tourist department for me at my university. And then after that, 2019, I went solo seemed like a great time to start working in tourism for yourself.
Perfect timing. Right before
every border's closed in the world. And then I started Seek Sustainable Japan as a way to keep going, keep talking about inspiring, interesting things with really interesting people as a way to keep us all going. Because I think we were all kind of, what are we going to do? What is the world looking like? We're so disconnected.
So you traveled a lot when you were, when you just arrived to Japan and traveled around Europe, and eventually started also kind of doing a recommendation website for people traveling to Hiroshima. But today you focus a lot on sustainability. Where did this interest into sustainability and especially sustainable travel really start? Was there like an event or something that made you realize?
I think growing up in Hawaii, I saw so many bad examples of tourism.
Okay.
You know, like we talk about over-tourism stuff. Hawaii has been dealing with these same problems that we're seeing in Japan for many, many years. And so growing up as a local in Hawaii, and you go to some places which you like as a local, but it's too busy because too many tourists are there. And then thinking about how would it be better? And then in Hawaii, we have something called kama'aina discounts or times when only locals can go, and then it'll be open for the public. So there's so many examples which I think I grew up seeing, not really putting together to sustainable tourism. But now I'm able to apply so many of those same concepts as good strategies, ways forward. And now if I do consulting with, for example, a guest house, and they're thinking about appealing to international visitors, and they want my advice, not just about sustainability, usually that comes next. But for me, appealing to international visitors now really goes hand in hand with showing that you're a more ethical business, you're a more sustainable business. So my business, Inbound Ambassador, is about how do you balance the needs of visitors with local people? How do you have a type of tourism that supports the local economy, supports local people, but also doesn't damage the environment? And I think what we're seeing now is that's what the customer wants too. So it's kind of developed over many years. I was working in a university, so I was researching case studies around Japan. I did the university work for full-time for 21 years. But then going out as independent, working for myself, when you're an academic, everything's so black and white, right?
Yeah, you do your research, you put it to paper, you have to quote the sources, you have to follow the structure of the research.
It also seems easy as an academic. And so once I started independently working for myself and talking to businesses who are actually trying to do things, or talking to visitors and actually hearing what they wanted, you realize, there's a lot of things that the big picture, like the big companies or the governments are saying, this is the way forward for sustainability. Actually, that's really hard. And that's not something happening right now. So
it's more like a grand vision for in 20 years, we want to be there, but no
which is
action
important.
plan.
That's really important. But you also need to look at what's working right now. And especially what's been working in Japan for so long, and take some of those principles and reapply them. If you think of like traditional Japanese culture, motainai, the sampoyoshi, right? The idea of businesses taking care of community and society, having that obligation to society while you make money. That is a traditional Japanese business style that we want for sustainable businesses, right?
So let's go to the time when you decide to start your own company, 2019. Why did you decide to leave your work as a researcher at the university and just start your company? Because you had been already advising a lot on travel with the city of Hiroshima. What was the difference?
I think university professors have a lot of respect, and you'll often see university professors on the news, or university professors hired or asked in for consulting. But it is very academic. It's not really, or I shouldn't, for me, it wasn't really based on actual strategies they can implement right now. It was more philosophical and
too much theory
and there's a lot of great case studies, but they've been doing it for a very long time. So when I decided, I turned 50 and I was like, okay, I've been at my university for 21 years. I really love teaching. I do. And I love doing the research, but you know, you hit certain times in your life and you're thinking, there might be something else. I need new challenges. I need to actually get out and see what it's like in the real world, you know? And then if I want to go back to university again someday, I'm still, 50 is young in Japan.
Yeah.
I could do
halfway.
that. Halfway, yeah. And so it was a chance to really challenge myself. And didn't realize we wouldn't have any tourism for 2 years. Of course, nobody did. But I found a way to do the podcast and make great collaborations and connections with people around Japan because I was stuck inside. So I always look for the silver lining, the positive. What can we do? What might help other people? How can I uplift the good work of others? That's always been kind of a core philosophy.
So when you left the academic side of research on sustainability and sustainable travel, and you actually went to consult with businesses in and around Hiroshima, what were the things that really struck you as, oh yeah, this sounds very nice in theory, but those people can't actually do anything with that, right? Because these grand visions from the government, for example, they don't have an action plan for the local restaurant. What were some of these things that you noticed when you went into the field?
At the end of my time at university, I finished my second master's, and this one was in sustainable tourism with an American university. And so I had so many great strategies from those years of studies. And I think a lot of those can be applied by almost any business, right? Like now, going directly, I thought when I went independently that I would just go to businesses and they would be happy to hire me as a strategist, and that never happened. So Inbound Ambassador, one of the ways to get in the door is because I understand the international market. I understand what international visitors to Japan, what they're looking for, what kind of service they need. And once I'm talking about that, about international appeal for visitors and new residents, that's a good time to start talking about, if you use reusable cups instead of single-use plastic bottles, that's going to appeal more. They're going to feel more like that's a nice experience instead of, I'm creating waste right away. Like there's certain small things.
So approach first with the business benefits and then kind of sandwich it with if you're sustainable, you're going to get even more out of it.
But there's so much business benefit. You can save a lot over long periods if you do have sustainable strategies as well. So it does benefit the business. But I think you're right, what we were talking about before, the government targets like SDGs, for example.
The famous,
the famous wheel that everybody wears. And then that's always a great opportunity to ask, you're wearing the wheel. What kind of things are you doing at your business? And
do you know what's on the
wheel? They
wheel?
slowly back away.
Yeah.
Usually.
The SDG
But so recently I've started being a sustainable travel consultant for the inbound market through places like JNTO. So these are organizations that a lot of businesses trust.
So JNTO is Japan National Travel Organization?
Yes. And they have me on a list of people that understand about sustainable travel. So only now am I getting businesses.
So it's like credential from the government.
Yes. So it takes time. And I think this is probably something you've gone over with a lot of other guests, right? Like, how do you get started in business? How do you learn about parenting? There's so many things that it just takes time. You just have to keep making great connections. And then eventually people start trusting you. Trust is so important in Japan, anywhere, maybe.
You mentioned that for those businesses, you focus a lot on inbound tourism, so people coming from overseas. And we see especially, so I'm from Europe, there's been a lot of discussion around sustainability, around sustainable development, around removing single-use plastic, replacing cups with recyclable cups, and so on and so forth. So those tourists coming from Europe, are influenced by this, and they hope to find this here as well in Japan. Up until recently, and still today, plastic use in Japan per capita is very high. Do you feel that Japanese tourists now are also asking and looking for sustainable initiatives when they travel, or is it not something that yet kind of is a key point for them to choose where they go?
I think that's how the inbound market is making positive pressure on the local tourism industry, because during COVID, when the borders were shut, we had places that were offering a vegan option, for example, which is more sustainable because it usually features local vegetables and less meat and fish, and often meat and fish is imported, which has a carbon cost. We saw places that had great options because the borders were open, international visitors were asking for this. During COVID, they took it off the menu. Now, whether that was because nobody was ordering it or they assumed Japanese people don't care about this, Japanese customers never, I don't know which it was, but we saw that happen a lot. And so now the borders are open again. We're seeing places say, oh, we want a vegan option. Oh yeah, people are always asking for that. How can we do that? And then in that way, we can help, give ideas and strategies and ways forward, which will benefit them as a business because there's still so few options, especially for vegan vegetarian.
Yeah, it's very limited.
Right? And then organizations like MyMizu, who have the app, and it shows you where you can refill your bottle with clean, good drinking water for free. Those kinds of organizations really help support visitors, because I've been guiding as well since the borders opened this year, and that really informs a lot of my consulting, but it's also another revenue stream, which is important when you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. But I hear directly from visitors all the time, why is there only plastic bottles? Why is there so much plastic packaging? Because it's changed so much abroad, they feel uncomfortable.
To reuse them, to go back to what it was like in their country 10 years ago.
Right? So they're like, what is happening in Japan? Why is it so hard to find a place to refill my bottle? Why is it so hard to use my coffee cup at the convenience store? These are things other countries seem to have really developed quickly, and why Japan isn't moving forward. So in that way, I think inbound tourism, that soft pressure, that positive pressure coming from international visitors, that's good. That's helping Japan move forward in the right way.
So I'm very curious then, because you mentioned local tourists are not yet so much kind of affected or part of the discussion on sustainability, at least in travel, in respect to travel. So when you go to a restaurant or hotel to consult with them for sustainable initiatives, the staff, mostly assumingly being Japanese, are also domestic tourists and are also themselves not so much aware and understanding of issues regarding sustainability. So how do you approach the discussion with them to get them to really realize using a single-use plastic cup is maybe not the best. Having all this throwaway plastic is maybe not the best. How do you get them to understand, oh yeah, maybe we should rethink what we're doing here?
Yeah. To realize what their problems are that they're having right now and what things they're really worried about. One huge issue right now in Japan is labor. There's just not enough workers. So if you say, if you have a refill water station here and people can go fill up their own bottles, you don't need staff there. You don't need staff who's going to sell them the single use plastic bottle. You don't need staff that's going to refill the vending machine that's single use. You have filtered water coming from the pipe. That's less work for you. And if you can find ways to have less demand on labor right now in Japan, that is a huge advantage. And they're very attracted to that.
That's interesting because basically for you, the benefit is they're eventually going to stop the single use and they're going to use the reusable water system. For them, they don't necessarily see it as we're being sustainable. It's we're saving costs on labor, right?
But also, who throws away all that waste? That's another labor cost, right? They need people to do that. They need to pay for getting rid of waste. So there's a lot of cost benefit as well as labor shortage, right?
Do they get to an understanding though of the reason why this is actually good?
Of course, then they see the value too. Yeah. And it looks cleaner. That's another nice tangent, right? The design, it looks better. Everybody knows Marie Kondo, right? And her influence about minimalism.
Yes.
Well, if you have all this plastic trash after you eat your bento, that doesn't look nice. But if you have a reusable bento, if they're going to eat it in, why don't you give them reusable plates? And it looks nicer. They're going to Instagram that, right? It makes your business look better. And there's a lot of knock-on positive effects, I think.
So basically, your approach to getting the discussion on sustainability going is not kind of hard on, you need to be eco-friendly, but rather how can eco-friendliness benefit you as a business, and introduce it like that.
Yeah. And I think the perception of the international visitors now and the kinds of things that I hear them say is really useful, because I can say, French visitors, they often say this, or Canadian visitors, they're often complaining about this, right? And then that's a great way to say a little bit stronger, that's why we should consider these. Try it, see what the reaction is. And often businesses who do make these positive changes, they say also the Japanese customers have positive comments or positive reactions. Especially if you're exchanging like a single-use coffee cup, for example. There was a real trend, and I think it's still happening now, where even if you're having coffee in, they'll give you a single-use takeaway coffee cup, right?
Very common.
Right?
Very common.
And then places that were like, if you give them, like your area is quite famous for pottery, or the next area has really nice pottery. If you have local pottery cups, your visitors are going to love that.
Take photos, post them on Instagram.
Yeah. And then you have a chance to support another local business, which is also very important for sustainability. Because the way I define sustainability, it's not just about the environment. It's about people, planet, profit, right? It's about having support of people, which includes culture, which includes local people, employment, things that we need in our lives as people, planet, all the environmental factors, but also profits, like having a good quality of life. It includes making a decent economy. So not just focusing on the profit part, which I think is the reason we're having so many problems around the world, right? Just focused on the profit part, but thinking of profits over the long term. So if you put solar panels on your company right now, or on your new house that you're building, or remodeling an old house, put solar panels on, you're laughing in 10 years because what's happening right now, the Japan yen is bottoming out.
Yes.
All of our energy, fossil fuel energy, is imported. So the energy market is insane. Plus, if you have a natural disaster, which often happens in Japan, you've got your own energy. Your customers staying in your guest house, they're going to be able to charge their phones, use the fridge, watch TV or whatever, right? Like that's added benefits. That a lot of, it doesn't seem like that would be a benefit from solar, or solar plus battery, even better, but those really help a business, right?
So for you, people, planet, profit are the three keys to sustainability. If we now look like broadly speaking, what is the discussion around sustainability like in Japan right now? You've been part of a university group of researchers, so I assume you've also kind of interacted with a lot of other people acting or trying to act in this, maybe politicians as well as activists. Does a discussion look like? Is there an understanding of what's going on, or what do people talk about?
Yeah, it's really frustrating right now, because I do see a lot of movement with businesses, especially international businesses in Japan, because like I said before, they're coming from a place which is already kind of developed these concepts as core parts of the business philosophy.
Yes.
So they're also changing in a positive way the whole business culture in Japan. But to be honest, like the last few big conferences, G7,
Which was in Osaka, right?
That was in Hiroshima.
Oh, Hiroshima was G7, but there was another G something in Osaka last month. I don't remember
maybe.
what.
Yeah.
So many
There's
summits.
a lot.
But
And then I'm on a bunch of lists, so I'm constantly invited to SDG seminars or SDG events. When we had the borders closed and I wasn't having any tourism work, I applied for a few jobs with companies that were advertising themselves as very SDG led, very sustainably led. But if I watch their press conference and their panel of top people is all men and all plastic bottles in front of them, I was like, no, that's not for me. Like if they're not at that level where they can show diversity, is a big problem in Japan. They can show that they can at least put water in cups or glasses. That even that level, that seems like low-hanging fruit. I stay in a lot of hotels as I'm doing consulting. And at the moment, it seems like most hotels are having a good trend where they put the plastic amenities in the lobby, right? You have to pay for a plastic bag. These are like the lowest denominator, like that everybody should have that low level, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to a hotel like yesterday and everything's back in the room and
oh no.
And I'm like, why? What is happening? It's like we're taking a step back. And ever since I've been here, the gender and diversity issue has been really forefront of problems in Japan, I would say. 51% of the population, but representation is now 0 in the top government. It's just unbelievable. And it's the first time since 2001. So it's like, are we going backwards? If the government with their targets, if they can't show it, how can they expect other governments around Japan, other businesses to do it, right? There's no regulation with teeth. Right? Like even buying your plastic bag for 10 yen, that might have decreased the amount of plastic bags that people were using. But then a lot of supermarkets have free plastic bags. A lot of bakeries still using free plastic bags. So you have to take away the bad choice. There has to be no plastic bags. That sounds harsh, but how many other countries have done it? Quite a lot. Hawaii did it 10 years ago. They found that plastic bags were ending up in the ocean. The ocean is a huge asset for tourism. Tourism is the main industry. It doesn't make sense to have plastic bags, so they got rid of them. If it's a paper bag, it biodegrades. It's not a big problem,
I mean,
right?
if you go to a bakery here, I see this story going on online again and again and again. You order, I don't know, let's say you order for your family 6, 7 pastries. Each of them is going to be wrapped individually in a small plastic bag. They're all going to be wrapped in groups of 3 in another medium plastic bag, and the whole thing is going to be wrapped in a final plastic bag for you to take home.
Yeah. So in my life, I'm constantly trying to push the line, right? And see, does this strategy work? So there's a bakery I love in Hiroshima, and they do that same typical thing with all the plastic bags. So I found out that if I buy a paper bag, 10 yen paper bag from them, they will let me, isn't that crazy, go from my tray, which has no wrapping with all the breads, to the paper bag that they're selling me without any extra bags. And so I've got it down to a science. It seems very smooth. It actually saves them time as well. But then every now and again, I'll get a new staff saying, no, you have to have all the plastic bags.
Oh my God.
And then I'm like, okay, that's frustrating, but why? Why do you think I need all the plastic bags? Like where is that idea coming from? So then you're reminded training is important. Like if I go to a hotel, I'm very impressed with the Hyatt, very impressed with Hilton, but these are international businesses. If I ask any staff about their sustainability standards, they all know. They have good training, right? If I go to a Japanese business, even if online, they look amazing. They have really good policies. But if I ask their check-in person and they don't know, that's not good. Like every staff member should be aware of what sustainable practices they're doing and how they see it in action too, right?
That's a big problem to solve, right? Because then, from what you said, on a government level, the discussion is not really going on. It's like there's a little bit of international pressure. Okay, we need to do something about sustainable development. Let's make SDG goals. Let's give everyone this little pin and make plastic bags 10 yen instead of free. But in practice, as you said, there's no training, right? So people, they don't understand why using 10 plastic bags just to bag a few pastries is not environmentally friendly. Is
there no training, or is there just the wrong kind of training?
Well, this is the big question, right? Where do we start? Because every business is independent, right?
Yeah.
So do you need to get a training as part of, for example, you open a bakery, so you need to have a food and beverage license. Should there be a training on sustainability as part? Where do you start?
There's a
with
lot
the
of hurdles there. Like that sounds hard to me. So by my little influence, my little positive pressure, whenever I go, now I know certain stuff and they know me. They know what I'm asking for. They know I don't want plastic bags. When they train the next person, they might say, oh, sometimes you might be asked just to put it in the paper bag without plastic. That's fine. So that's like an incremental change, but that means something, I think, because those are the people training the next staff, right? And what else can you do as a customer? Especially as foreigners. Yes. As foreigners living in Japan, we can't vote unless you give up your passport and get naturalized. And so our influence is to influence how businesses operate for other international customers, for the inbound market. But also, we have social media, right? We can share when we go to a place, oh, this place is really good. They use hardly any plastic. Look at them, they've got vegan options. To do that on social media is really powerful. To talk about it in a podcast, that's powerful. So I think people are listening inside government. People are listening inside Japanese companies. And the out to in influence has always been very positive pressure on Japan. One of the examples I always love to give is, do you know that amazing artist Yayoi Kusama?
Yes, with the pumpkin in Naoshima.
And all the polka dots,
yes.
Right? But when she was doing her art in Japan, she was from the Matsumoto area, Nagano. They're like, no, we don't get it. I don't get that, which you can understand is out there, right? Modern art.
It's modern art.
So
abstract.
she went to New York. She was hanging out with Andy Warhol. She was getting, lots of people really interested in her in America and other countries. And then Japan's like, come back, we love you. And now you see her art everywhere. But would she have been able to get to this level of success had she not gone abroad? Had there not been that outside pressure on what is valued in Japan, right? So in that way, I like that example because it shows how the international market, the international residents even, we can have a good positive effect on things that should be moving in a better direction.
Interesting take, and I feel like it's a kind of common thread that's developing throughout the episodes we're having here on the podcast, where a lot of guests that we have see their role as bringing foreign ideas here, presenting them, and letting the ideas themselves kind of make little waves and see what happens. And just like you, not necessarily forcing the change, but just introducing alternatives.
Yeah, and there's so much already here, but it's not appreciated as much until the inbound market or the international customer appreciates it, talks about it. And then even though that's very Japanese, that gets a bit more attention. Little example, on Miyajima Island, so Hiroshima's famous UNESCO World Heritage,
the Torii Gate in the sea,
Torii Gate
where
in the
the
sea,
tide comes
one
in
of the
and
top
goes.
3 sites of Japan, right? But my favorite place, and definitely the most popular place when I take visitors there, is Daishoin Temple. And it's an ancient temple up on the hill, but they usually have little like flea market stalls run by locals. And one of the women, she goes around to all the derelict houses when people abandon their houses, and her thing is kokeshi dolls. And she collects these vintage kokeshi dolls and she sells them at the temple quite cheaply.
Interesting.
But I love the idea of reuse, like reuse old buildings, reuse old items that it seems like nobody wants those. But the international visitors, they love that. Or the old kimonos that they're pulling out of these abandoned houses as well. There didn't seem to be a market, but they sell it at the flea market. Now there's artisans who are upcycling the kimono into bags and other things that are so fashionable and cool. I think a lot of that started because the international visitor or the international resident saw the value of it, where most Japanese people were like old houses. They were like, who wants to live in that, right?
Yeah, it's too much trouble, but for foreigners, it has this little charm of old Japan. It's like, I can have this kominka and renovate this. And I think a lot of foreigners have had the dream of doing that.
Yeah.
Some Japanese people too.
Oh, yeah. So now I've been going to a big event every year called Kominka Summit, Minka Summit. And the first time it was in rural Kyoto, and then it was in Aichi. And we had big speakers like Asby Brown and Alex Kerr and amazing designers and entrepreneurs who are all connected to the reuse of old, beautiful houses. Carpenters working on old houses. And then the people who make like the wood stoves and the things. If you live in the countryside, you want these things, right? But like Alex Kerr always says, how do we bring these old houses into modern relevance? Right? No one wants to live in an old house as is.
It's cold in winter, it's hot in
dark,
summer,
right?
and full of cockroaches.
But if you add double glazed windows, insulation, nice toilet that's comfortable even in winter, you know, you keep the irori, you keep the fire, you keep the things that has the beautiful Japanese aesthetic, but you make it relevant for how we want to stay, how we want to live in our modern lives. And then you kind of have the best of both worlds because you didn't destroy all these amazing beams. The bones are great.
Yeah.
Why would you get rid of that? Yeah. So lots of great ideas.
I wanted to ask you, we talked a lot about you kind of being influenced from growing up in Hawaii and kind of sustainable initiatives that have been done there and introducing things you've seen from around the world to Japan. Have you seen some initiatives that kind of really started in Japan and that also surprised you, where you're like, this is really good, actually. This is something we should export from Japan?
Yeah, well, definitely public transport. My goodness.
You're not the first person to say this.
Oh my goodness. Amazing in Japan. In Hiroshima alone, we have a streetcar, tram. We have a monorail. We have the train. We have the Shinkansen. We have ferries. We have good cycling paths. It's very walkable city. Like, are you kidding me? Like Hawaii and America doesn't have any of this in most cities.
4x4
Everybody
Ford
is
truck.
totally dependent on their cars all the time, right? So in terms of public transport, Japan's winning. We just recently in Hawaii, we just finally built our first above traffic rail. And it was like 20 years in the making, loads of hurdles. It
takes a lot of time to build those.
Lots of fighting between political parties to get it to work. And when you see how efficient and wonderful the train and public transport systems are in Japan, that's such a huge asset.
But considering the scale of the infrastructure required to set this up, this was something that was well planned a long time ago by Japan, right?
Long-term vision.
But if you want to export this now to the US or to Europe, it's going to be hard to have or to start this from tomorrow.
Hard, but not impossible.
If we think maybe some smaller initiatives of things that maybe a restaurant, a small hotel, or an individual can do that you've seen starting in Japan.
I mean, a lot, you know, like one of my favorite places in Japan, which I visited first when I was researching and doing my sustainable travel masters, was Kamikatsu, the zero waste town. And like you said, it took a long time, a lot of years of planning, but they are at a level that no other town is. But it's because they don't have money, right? It's very cost based. The reason they try to reuse or recycle absolutely everything. Kamikatsu in Tokushima.
In Tokushima.
Shikoku Island, yeah. And so they had an amazing NPO or organization which was working between the government rules and regulations. We only have this much budget. We don't have money for garbage pickup. We don't have money for incinerator. We don't have money for landfill. What the heck are we going to do? So they got everybody to come to a centralized place, and they started separating garbage into 45 categories.
I think I've seen this on either YouTube or TV.
Yeah, it's famous, but it's kind of hard to go to. But I've been a few times. And so they've, the last 20, 30 years, these policies have kind of been moving along. But even in Kamikatsu, you still have some resistance. You still have some shops that'll give you the plastic bag and stuff, which blows my mind. But you did, by having this base of initiatives, by having these young entrepreneurs who are really into it and really passionate about it, and bringing in businesses. There's 2 breweries now run by the same business, Rise and Win. And they were all in with the concept. So they're running their brewery with zero waste concepts from the beginning, and they built their building. Their cool, stylish building is entirely made of old doors and old wood from around the abandoned area. I mean, it's just there's so many wonderful examples that you see there. And so like now, Hawaii, unfortunately, on Maui, we had this horrible
the big fire,
right? And it destroyed the whole old town.
Kalauna? What was the name of the town? Kalauna? Maybe I pronounced it wrong.
Lahaina?
Lahaina.
And they had a beautiful tree. And just to segue real fast, because I'm in Hiroshima, we have 150 A-bomb survivor trees. So these are trees that everybody thought were destroyed within the 2-kilometer radius, but they grew back and gave Hiroshima people so much hope. So when my friends in Hawaii were saying, oh no, we lost this beautiful banyan tree, I was like, well, don't lose hope yet, because trees are amazing and it might come back. And it sounds like it is.
Yeah, that's what the news said,
so
that the tree seems to be doing fine.
Giving people hope, right? But the whole town was destroyed. And that was another idea I often bring from Hawaii, that idea to have a historical town, that everything looks historical, classic, preserved. And there are pockets around Japan which are doing this really well.
A few small ones.
Right?
Yeah.
And burying the lines, keeping the houses, especially if they have UNESCO status. They're doing it really well, really beautiful. But this was the case for this town that was destroyed. So now's an opportunity to bring back that classic heritage style with insulation, with double pane glass, with solar in a way that's stylish.
I fully support that idea.
Right? And really rebuild in a sustainable way. You've got a blank slate. This is a great opportunity to show the world how it could be done, And I think those kind of ideas I've learned a lot about from Japan, and how if you do have a blank slate, you do have an opportunity because of UNESCO status or whatever, to get the funding to really develop these ideas on a wider stage, not just one individual business in a normal city, but an area that would have so much tourist appeal and new resident appeal. I would love to see that more in Japan too.
There's one thing about your story about Kamikatsu that struck me. And you said that there's still some people, even within this town that is zero waste, that resist. And that some people will give you the plastic bag. And what I'm thinking about is, it's just convenient. It's bad for the environment, but it's very convenient. And I'm just thinking now, on a bigger scale in Japan, a lot is done for convenience, right? The handout of plastic bags, well, it keeps your hand clean. You just don't need to carry a bag with you. You just have a bag, you can take everything.
That's the key word right there. Clean.
Clean and convenient.
Plastic is thought of as clean. And to me, I do monthly cleanups on the beach. Plastic is not clean. Plastic is gross. Plastic is in our bodies now, right? You can't see it, but it's in our bodies now. But in Japan, definitely that's one of the hurdles. If I wrap it in plastic, that's clean. That's nice. That's the way people want it. I'll give you an example. I have a student now. I still teach once a week at a university, and a student, she's from Korea, and another student from Vietnam, and another student from China in the same class. It's really interesting. And so we're talking about sustainability and strategies and things. And the Vietnamese student was saying in recent years, when she goes back, she notices they're going back to wrapping things in tea leaves. So you get rice balls, you get snacks, and it's wrapped in tea leaves, and that's how it's sold. And that's fabulous. Sometimes you'll see it in Japan, but it's a tea leaf and then wrapped in a plastic bag.
Wrapped in a plastic bag.
Why? It's like, I'm not going to eat that tea leaf. Why does it need to be in a plastic bag? So there's still that added hurdle of stopping plastic bags here. There's something about the cleanness of it.
I think the cleanness is certainly a factor of it. But the reason I was thinking about convenience is also, if we think back at the example of the train network, right, which is huge, but it's extremely convenient. So I'm wondering if maybe when they decided to build that, it was mostly like, oh, if we have trains everywhere, it's going to be convenient. We can go everywhere. Maybe not thought of as a sustainable solution at that time. And if we think now in Japan, there's like 3 million jihanki, the vending machines that just single-use water bottles all over the place, or tea bottles. So it's also convenient, right? The people will just stop by.
Yeah, you can take it anywhere with you. But somebody was posting on Twitter today about 100% recycled plastic bottle that the worst offender on the planet right now, Coca-Cola, is doing. And to me, that looks like a distraction, because you can only recycle plastic one time. How many times can you recycle steel, aluminum, glass, paper? Do you know?
I know that glass is infinite.
Infinity. Most other materials you can do over and over forever. So why are we still thinking of this idea of recycled plastic? It's not a thing. It's kind of a distraction from the big problem. And Coca-Cola is like polluting the oceans in the world, the biggest polluter in the world. So of course they're trying to distract us and be like, oh, look, 100% recycled plastic. Yeah, we don't want it. What would be ideal? We would love to see vending machines that had a refill section, so I could use my own bottle again and again. That's zero waste. That would be the ideal. What would be the next best? The old Coke machine style, where I use their glass bottle, I drink it, they wash it, they reuse it, they refill it, I use it again. That's the next best. What would be the next best? Aluminum, glass. The very bottom option would be plastic, single-use plastic, reusable plastic, right? But this is such a distraction right now. It's like if you go to any convenience store, they've got the plastic PET bottle recycling bin, you can get points and stuff. Sorry, no, that's a distraction.
So to change this is like a big scale change required, right? So that will require policy change as well from the government. In your experience, what will be some of the key policies that would need to happen in Japan to kind of unlock the situations in some of those instances?
It's going to be hard.
It's going to be hard. Too many things need to happen at the same time.
Hard, but you just need, I would say the first step is access. Right now, there is no access to refill my water bottle. There is no access at most convenience stores or bakeries or shops to refill my coffee cup. Now, unless you have access, you can't even talk about it.
And especially for convenience, they have all these coffee machines where you put a plastic, you could just put your cup. My fiance has this kind of foldable cup that she always brings around everywhere, and she could, but she can't. Because she can. They don't always allow to use it. She can.
There's one convenience store that won't allow it, and they're very passive aggressive about it. If I say, can I use my coffee cup? They force you to take the single-use cup. That's the most common convenience store you will see. But shout out to Lawson, shout out to Family Mart.
That leaves one left.
They will let you refill your own bottle. And sometimes when I say, can I reuse my coffee cup for coffee, they'll give me a discount even.
Well, this is what could happen, right? If you go to even chain coffee stores and
Starbucks, they'll give you a discount too.
I think this is a good incentive for people to start using their cups. But the policy change-wise, it's going to be difficult, right? There needs to be something happening, but a lot of things actually.
Yeah, I would go back to the take away the bad choice. Because if the bad choice is there, people will use it. I think of the basic standard right now in hotel rooms. You rarely ever see the single-use little shampoo bottles and stuff. You don't see that anymore, right? Yay! The bad choice was taken away. But when they first made that change and it's all reusable containers, people did complain. Like, oh, I would enjoy taking that home as a souvenir. And but you take the bad choice away and people get used to it. They're okay with it now. And the same thing would happen definitely if you said, the government said there's a ban on plastic bags. Even the little ones that people wrap the tofu or the fish or the meat in, that has to be banned too. If they did that, there would be an uproar. People would complain, but wait for it. They get used to it. It becomes okay.
Yeah,
but they also have to have a PR campaign as a part of it. I often hear people at the supermarket next to me saying, oh, why are they just charging us more for plastic bags? They never really get the concept that it's better for the planet, it's better for us.
So it goes back to the discussion we had earlier about when you introduce to hotels the sustainable alternatives, you do it as it's a benefit, it's a profit for them, they save cost.
And convenience.
It's
more convenient.
But then on this PR level, on a global scale, there needs to be some kind of more education, right?
Yeah.
In the field of sustainability,
So
maybe starting in schools.
We need to include in the targets. I think if the government's going to roll out these good policies, they need to ask the wide shows and the newscasters to go and cover this in a very positive way. Oh, wow, isn't it great that now you can use newspaper to wrap your tofu? And they've got newspaper there instead of another plastic bag. Oh, how cool. This is a new great trend for Japan. Like have a positive PR rollout at the same time as new policies. I think a lot of people just see SDGs as something other people have to do, like a compliance thing, and nobody really needs to do it. Like, why is it necessary? There just isn't that underlying knowledge of the reason, the value to us for convenience and quality of life. And if people had the idea, oh, actually, that makes my life better, they're going to do it, right?
Why? So some of those TV shows do these kind of documentaries or go to kamikatsu to film what's going on there, but on a smaller scale, right? Why do you think there's not more TV attention on sustainable initiatives? Because you have a podcast, Seek Sustainable Japan, where you interview a lot of people that do a lot of very interesting things in the field of sustainability in Japan and bring up new initiatives. So you found hundreds of people that you can highlight.
450 so far.
Yeah, that's a lot of 450. That could be 450 TV shows as well, right?
It's not just focused on sustainability. Like a lot of people I contact are like, I'm not actually doing anything about sustainability. And I say, oh my gosh, are you kidding? Like you're doing this and that's so connected to quality of life of local people. That's so connected to preserving culture. So definitely people, planet, connected profit. To sustainability, right? So it's even educating these amazing people who don't see what they do as part of people, planet, profit imbalance, right?
What are some of the most interesting stories you've heard from the people you had on you? Too many to pick from.
So many. Well, you've had some of them. So I'll shout out to some of the guests you've also had. Paprika Girl.
Yes.
Riki. She's doing amazing work. She's so multi-talented. She wears kimono as a part of her life. How wonderful is that? I've also talked to other women who are finding new ways to make kimono relevant to their modern life. Kimono Sheila is one of them. She actually teaches her style of kimono, the fusion of Western fashion with kimono fashion. She teaches it to Japanese students. They're interested, right? So that any time of that creativity, you talk to Daniel about ikebana, right? Yes. Ikebana is so appealing to international visitors. It's so appealing to
ancient traditional Japanese
residents,
art.
Yes, and he's keeping it alive by doing what he's doing. And that is so important for sustainability. Why? Because we want that to exist in the future. And if we don't have people like him having their passion for it and spreading the beauty of it, it might die out. And that would be such a shame, right? So many interesting people. How can I choose? Recently, you try to choose people that are also relevant for what's happening in the world right now.
What's in the news, what's being talked about.
So like the wastewater release by TEPCO
in Fukushima,
the Tohoku area. So talking with Asby Brown, and he's been studying that for a long time. And I had the chance to go to the coast area with him at the beginning of the year, and you meet the local people. And this is something that we don't hear from. Like, they're talking about wastewater release, but it's only like the central government or the company people who are giving us the information. Most of us here, we don't hear from the local fishermen and the local people who live there. How do they feel about it? And so when I had the chance to go there and meet them, wow, that was powerful. You know, and hearing how they're testing everything. And if you buy rice there's a QR code. You can scan it with your phone. You can see exactly what the levels are because they're testing everything in that area. The fishermen as well. And they were starting to rebuild this loyalty amongst their customers. And now they feel like even if they had a QR code, even if they're testing everything, people won't trust it. And so that's a part of new policy that I don't even think they were consulted enough. That's really important. Now they don't want to live there. There's no reason to live there if they lose their whole industry. So that's losing a big part of Japan.
It's a big area.
It's a big area. So that should definitely have come into the discussions, right?
Have you seen any initiative where you kind of consulted on that then had a trickle-down effect, where they then shared what they learned from you and with you to other businesses around them, and that you can kind of see the ideas spread?
Yeah, that's hard. But I do see the knock-on effects from the show a lot, Seek Sustainable Japan. So I'll hear from someone that they found out about someone because of the show, and then they went to support that business, or they started
creating a community around it on your podcast.
So, and I often don't hear that, right, myself. I'm just putting it out there, and then you don't really know until much later what the knock-on effects are. But it's like what you're doing too, right? You feel like you're doing the best you can. It's becoming a part of history for Japan right now. Yeah. And you're documenting what's happening in a positive way. So everybody who's listening is able to use it to make their life better or their business better. And you're not really sure the positive effects until a bit later. But I do hear of people supporting the organic farmers I have on the show, starting a subscription service, which really helps them because it's very difficult to sell organic to JA, which is the biggest buyer.
Japan Agriculture, yeah.
Because they don't really support all natural, because they also sell the chemicals. So it's hard for them to support organic.
The challenge of an ultra-centralized system, right?
Yes. But if these organic farmers or natural farmers, if they can get direct customers who see the value of what they're doing and promise, to buy monthly and have that regular income coming in, that's a big support for them. So, yeah, I'm so happy to hear that.
Japan is kind of like the rest of the world, as a crossroads right now, where a lot of things need to happen and to change for us to kind of preserve our environment. What do you think it looks like for Japan in the next few years in terms of this fight for sustainability?
Yeah, I think the inbound market is having a really key role, because connected to the labor shortage, we have to have more international workers come to Japan. We have to have more international residents. And a lot of the areas that I go to, because I'm consulting on how to appeal more to the international market, it always connects to how can you get more residents to come live here, to work in the hotels, to work in the restaurants, and have that added appeal. You can't just have an empty destination, right? That's not going to appeal to people. No. And that's one of Alex Kerr's things. He's been consulting around Japan how to remodel these old houses into beautiful guest houses. But it also brings in new residents, because the residents work in the guest houses. The residents will have restaurants supporting the guest house, right? And then you're rebuilding these communities. And that's really the end goal. How do we keep these amazing destinations and communities alive, right? And I think the inbound market and international residents have a real key role to play.
So rebuilding communities, maintaining communities, and kind of having an ecosystem of the people working in those remote areas is kind of the key to success in the next few years, or rather one of the key steps to take.
And I think we're going to see start to see pockets of certain nationalities in different areas. Japan's going to change really fast. We're already seeing it in Hiroshima. One of our famous sake areas is Saijo. And they also have an international university there. And so because they've had lots of international students for many years, now you're starting to see after they do their studies, they stay there, they start businesses, they start families. So it's a much higher percentage of international residents than other places, right? And we're going to start seeing that more and more around Japan, especially around international universities. Maybe bring the JET program back, because so many of us ended up staying. They've really scaled down. When I came in the 90s, it was like 5,000 people they brought out every year. And I think it's becoming just an eikaiwa job. You're not as much a part of the community, I think, and the government's kind of scaled it back. But I think it has a lot of value, that program.
So if now you see maybe people in their 20s, young entrepreneurs that want to get started and want to be active in this field of sustainability, or maybe consider sustainability as part of their business or business model, what kind of advice would you like to give them?
I would keep going around and seeing businesses that you admire and businesses that you like using, and then thinking about what they're doing that makes you enjoy it on a personal level. And then going to more sustainable businesses that have a reputation for having vegan options or having reusable containers or no plastics, and seeing the reaction of customers and how the customers react to that. Looking online, what kinds of things are the reviewers saying of this place on Google Maps even. And then you get an idea, are those the kind of people that I want? I would say 100% yes. Those are the people you want coming to your business too. And then you'll start it seems hard to implement these strategies because they're not maybe the traditional way of running a business where you give so much plastic for convenience or clean. But once you start implementing these strategies, I think you start understanding the benefits by doing. And on a personal level, understand the benefits by doing when you do a little, what is it called? When you not edit, but when you audit. When you look at what you're doing in your house and what you're doing in your life. So in my house, I've done this many times. I keep doing it. That's another key point of sustainability. Reassess, get more information, keep improving. It's not an end goal. It's always like forever. Process. It's a marathon, right? So I'm constantly doing this. Every season, I try to do it. So you look at all the trash that you're creating. Where's the trash coming from? Oh, wow, we're creating, like oil, vegetable oil. That was one of the things that I couldn't find an alternative for. It's always in a plastic bottle, but I hated those hard plastic single-use bottles. So I kept asking around my friends, and they're like, oh, there's one place you can refill your own container. And I was like, no way. That's amazing, right? So you just keep asking and putting it out on Twitter. It's still a very active community on Twitter.
Sharing and highlighting those initiatives seems to be kind of a very important part of everything.
And getting information, right? Like I have a monthly subscription to an organic farm from Miyajima. They're awesome. But I often get things I have no idea how to cook. Like it's a seasonal vegetable I've never seen before.
So they could complement it with a cookbook or like recipes.
Oh no, I don't want to put any pressure on them because they're busy farmers. But that's where I go on Twitter and I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this. And then all these international residents who are part of my community online, they give me so many insights and suggestions. And
comes back to community.
I'm still fighting to learn to appreciate Goya. That's always my challenge every season.
It has an acquired taste. It's something that...
Maybe I'll get there someday. I have learned to love natto. So personally,
natto is great though. I love natto.
Personally, that's a big accomplishment for me because I know it's good for me and fermented and vegan and healthy. But you have to avoid the one that comes in styrofoam. There's always a better one, like a paper packet, right? I mean, everything. There's always ways to improve pretty much for everything in my life. And then if I go to do a consult with a business, I'm excited to help them. And I try to keep it really positive and say, you're doing this and that's a really great thing you're doing. How about like tweaking this a little bit? And this is what some other guest houses are doing. And that's been really popular. Just giving them options, giving them examples from not only Japan, but other countries for the target that they're trying to get. But it's exciting because I see in their eyes that they're starting to see potential for the things I'm talking about. They're like, oh yeah, we were thinking about that too. I'm like, yay, great.
You may have just answered my next question, but I was wondering, it's a big fight, big endeavor to spread information, spread ideas, promote change in sustainability. And sometimes when we look at the news, it's very depressing. What is it that motivates you to kind of keep going and to keep being positive about the change that's happening on a smaller scale here and there, people kind of reaching out?
Yeah, I think I get a lot of energy from other people. And I think that's a human thing, right? So when I do a consult and I'm trying to be positive and encouraging, and I get energy from them, and I hope they get energy from me to try things out. When I interview people, I get a lot of energy from them and great insights and, oh, wow, that's so interesting. So I think maintaining my curiosity also helps keep me going, right? I'm really interested in almost everything. People are like, oh my gosh, you've been in Japan for 30 years. How are you still interested in everything? And I was like, are you kidding? I could live here for 1,000 years and still be learning. There's always so many interesting things there's lots of layers in Japan.
Like an onion.
Like an onion. You go in a different neighborhood around where you're working or living, you'll discover a whole new layer of culture and interesting people that you never knew existed, and they're around the corner from you. And I feel like Japan is really beautiful in that way,
So looking back at all your time spent here in Japan, do you feel like leaving the university, starting your own thing, and maybe working more and more on sustainable initiatives has changed your perspective on the country or changed your experience? Yeah.
Well, I definitely feel more engaged. I think the way a university is set up, you're doing a lot of research, you're doing a lot of work internally for your students, for your staff. You do publish every now and again, but you're not really engaged with the actual people doing things, the actual people running the businesses.
You're like in an ivory tower.
Kind of.
Looking from the top, observing, researching, collecting data, and drawing conclusions.
So if I do go back to education, if I could work somewhere where they're very engaged, where they go out in the real world and do training and get students doing research and getting the data and really helping businesses, I think there's a great role for universities and education to have in this process of building. But a lot of universities are run like businesses and not really focused on the education. It's a crunch time right now for young people. So a lot of universities are having a lot less people applying. So they have to think about the numbers as well. So that's a problem.
Get the research grants and fund the research, and if the money doesn't come in.
So I feel in that way, I'm running my own business. I'm working for myself. I have so much flexibility. I can manage my own schedule. So I was so glad to get your invitation. And then I just adjusted things and I could come and talk to you. And if I was working for a university, that would have been really hard to do because I have obligations. If I was teaching, no way would I be able to come and adjust my schedule, right? If it was a meeting, I wouldn't be able to come.
So taking the leap for entrepreneurship kind of got you to discover another layer of the onion, so to say, and get maybe more involved in the community. And that's nice.
Absolutely.
We covered a lot of topics today. Do you feel like there's something important about your work on sustainability or about sustainability in Japan that we haven't touched upon that you want to kind of share something about?
I mean, I think going back to that core philosophy of just seeing where you are, being honest with yourself, and supporting the good work of others. Like if you find a business that's doing great things, you hear about someone who's doing great things, like share that. I think that's one of our modern world assets right now, there's too much information, a lot of misinformation. But I think where we are right now is we're learning who to trust in our social network. And so the personal voices of other people we trust has more value in our lives, right? Like I've noticed a lot of visitors too. They don't really only trust booking.com anymore. They don't only trust Google anymore. They want to see people's blogs. They want to see people.
It's going back to the.
Right. Yeah. And I've heard so many visitors say they're looking for books now. They trust books more because there's too much misinformation online. So I think we're at a really important and very interesting time where your personal qualities over time build trust. And then you're going to be trusted more than big business. Whereas always, until now, I think big business and government was trusted a lot more. But I think we're at a real shift time.
It is
right?
shifting.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It does. In a way, I think it's a good way to end the conversation, because you kind of summed up where we are right now. And I think you've given us insight into a lot of existing solutions, and you have even more available on your podcast, Seek Sustainable Japan. So we will, of course, link it in the description so people can find your work, find you, and see what are all those things that people are doing in Japan.
And if anybody is running a business or wants to start a business and you want ideas how to get started in a more sustainable way, I'm happy to help and reach out. And if it's a full-on consult and you want me to come out, then I will need to get that funded, covered. But if it's a short email or to send you some links, I'm happy to do that for free as part of what I do and the knowledge that I have, because I feel like I'm not contacted enough by people who are really keen and really interested, because they're worried about the money thing. So please don't let the money thing hold you back. If you're getting started, reach out. I'm easy to contact online. JJ Walsh Japan. If you search YouTube, JJ Walsh Japan is just me. So that's pretty easy to find. And then on Twitter, who knows if Twitter will exist. But if you Google JJ Walsh Japan, you should find me.
We'll have the links below.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming, Joy, all the way from Hiroshima. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for sharing your insights.
Oh, thank you so much. I really love talking to you. And I love all the great guests that you're having.
And we have many more coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to taking some time, doing some gardening, doing some walks, and having you in my ear as I walk around, getting inspired. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening as well. Thank you for watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back next week. Bye.
Bye.